Today, we're diving into a really big topic, the end times. But we're going to explore it through the very unique lens of an author named Macy. He has this idea that the apocalypse might not be what we all think it is. So what if it's not an ending at all, but something else entirely?
Seriously, when you hear that word apocalypse, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, I'm guessing it's fire, chaos, the end of the world as we know it. But the author we're looking at today asks us to just toss that whole image right out the window.
For him, the word goes back to its Greek roots, which actually means revelation. So it's not about some fiery end, but an unveiling, a time when truths that have been hidden finally come to light, all to get us ready for a massive transition, kind of like a planetary spring cleaning.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get into his cosmic map of reality. You got to see that to get the rest. Then, we'll look at how he connects that map to the crises we see today. And finally, we'll explore the solutions he puts on the table, for us as individuals and for the whole world, which all leads up to a huge choice he says we all have to make.
Okay, first up, the author's cosmic map. Now, to really wrap your head around his take on our modern world, we have to start with his basic structure of reality. It's a pretty big idea, but trust me, it's the foundation for everything else that follows. So the author describes reality as being kind of nested, like Russian dolls. At the very, very center of everything is what he calls the source, just pure creative energy. And this energy flows outward, creating everything. He suggests reality is split into 7 different levels of vibration. Level 3 is described as our spiritual home, a kind of paradise. But our physical world, Earth, we're way down at level 1, out on the densest, most remote edge of it all.
Now, according to the author, this is where the problem starts. He says life on Earth is defined by win-lose situations, predator versus prey, survival of the fittest. He believes this constant struggle actually distorts or refracts that pure energy coming from the source. And over millions of years, this has created a kind of psychic pollution, a dark spiritual shadow that hangs around our planet.
And this right here is the key takeaway from his whole cosmology. This dark shadow, this huge buildup of fear, anger, and suffering is what he believes is the root cause of our periodic apocalypses. In his view, they aren't punishments from God or anything like that. They're necessary cosmic cycles, almost like a planetary reset button, designed to cleanse all of this built-up negative energy.
So you might be asking, how does this kind of abstract spiritual idea of a dark shadow actually show up in the real world? Well, the author argues that as things unravel, the symptoms are all around us, connecting that spiritual problem directly to what we can see and touch.
He points to concrete, real-world data. A chart like this, showing these crazy spikes in population, war, and environmental damage. We see stuff like this in scientific reports all the time. But for the author, these aren't just a handful of separate problems. He sees it all as one big symptom, the physical eruption of that spiritual distress we were just talking about.
And this is where things get really interesting. He connects these very modern crises to ancient spiritual texts. He looks at prophecies like this one from the Hindu Vishnu Purana, and he doesn't see them as just old myths. He sees them as eerily accurate descriptions of our current age, an age where materialism and lies often seem to be the fastest way to get ahead. Okay, so if that's the diagnosis of the problem, what's the cure? The author lays out a 2-pronged approach. He basically says you can't fix the world if you don't fix yourself, but you also can't really find personal peace if you're living in a totally broken system. So the way forward has to be both deeply personal and radically global at the same time. Let's start with that personal path to peace. The author's main point here is that any real change out there has to start in here. Finding your own stability in the middle of a storm, he says, is the single most important thing you can do to get ready for what's coming. So the path starts with recognizing what he calls our inner light, that direct connection we all have back to that central source energy. Through things like heart-focused meditation, we can shift our awareness away from the noise in our heads and toward this peaceful core. And from that calm center, you can watch the world's drama play out without getting sucked into it. And what's more, you start to see that same inner light in everyone else. Yeah, even in the people you might consider your enemies. But finding inner peace, that's only half the battle. Next up, we're going to look at the author's standards for a new world. This is his blueprint for totally overhauling our global systems, which he argues are fundamentally at odds with nature itself. His critique gets really sharp when he talks about our economy. Just look at this quote. He makes this incredibly powerful analogy.
Our obsession with endless economic growth is to a country what cancer is to a body. It's a destructive force that just consumes its own host.
So his alternative is something he calls the vitality ratio, which you can see here. It's a really simple but also pretty radical idea. Instead of just measuring growth, it measures economic health, or V for vitality. And it does that by creating a balance between R, our available resources, and N, the actual needs of our people. The goal just completely shifts from endless expansion to simple, elegant sustainability.
And that vitality ratio is just one piece of a much larger blueprint of what he calls universal standards. This includes social standards that focus on teaching values like love and honesty, political standards that bring decision-making down to the local level, and even religious standards that could unite different faiths around the core truths they all share.
So all of this leads us to the final section, the choice that's right in front of us. If there's one single thing to take away from the author's work, it's this feeling of agency. In his view, our future is not set in stone. We are not just passengers on some ride to a predetermined ending.
He really sums it all up in this one powerful quote: "Our fate is in our noble, savage hands." He's saying that we, as a species, are this profound contradiction, right? We're capable of incredible acts of nobility and good, but also incredible harm. And right now, the choice between which side wins out, well, that's entirely up to us.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. When we're faced with this choice between our higher, noble instincts and our lower, savage ones, which path are we, collectively, going to choose? The answer to that question, he suggests, is what will define the dawn of our next age.